This is NC Spin, an unrehearsed discussion on issues of interest to North Carolinians. Now, here is your moderator, Tom Campbell.
Welcome. You've heard and read the spin the media and the politicians have put on the issues of the day. To get the correct spin on what's going on in North Carolina, let's introduce you to our panel of experts. They include former legislator Connie Wilson, Chris Fitzsimon from NC Policy Watch, Syndicated columnist and author John Hood, and former Lieutenant Governor Dennis Wicker. Well, this week we're going to examine the potential fallout from the November 8th elections, especially the fallout to our state from a Trump presidency. We're going to discuss the Hurricane Matthew recovery efforts and damage from the Lake Lure fires. Plus, we'll ask the panel to tell us something we don't know. Let's get started. We've all had time now to reflect on the 2016 election outcomes, and we want to provide some additional insights we've gained. As the sage Yogi Berra once said, it ain't over till it's over. Well, it's obvious that in as many as 3 statewide races, we're going to have a recount of the ballots. Connie, after last week's show, departing Senate Leader Bob Rucho took me to task for saying that HB 2 was a big factor in Pat McCrory's vote totals. What's your take on the input of the HB 2 in the outcome?
Well, first of all, I'm shocked that Bob said anything because he's so quiet and unassuming.
Yes,
but
mild-mannered.
That's right, exactly. You never know where Bob stands or sits or wherever. But overall, when you look at the whole state, yeah, it hurt McCrory in urban areas. But in rural areas where there was tremendous voter turnout, it compensated. So basically, HB 2 was a wash. But there were other issues that came in that hurt and made a difference, like I-77 and little things. A lot of times it's the little things that matter a lot. Like there was a recent appointment to the Marine Fisheries Commission that was very controversial along the coast that cost him some votes. So when you add all those things together, that's where
Dennis, you agree with that? I mean, I'm sure I'm going to hear from Bob Rucho already, so you might as well pile on here.
No, I think I agree with most of that. I think it wasn't necessarily a wash because I think the margins in the urban areas, the blue counties I'll call them, were much higher for Cooper and for Stein, and that got him over the hump, Cooper hopefully so permanently. But I think that it also allowed Cooper to raise more money because I think the business community, when this morphed into an economic development issue, sort of
came over to him.
Yeah, that's right.
Chris, the governor has already said he's going to call a special session of the legislature in December to deal with Hurricane Matthew related allocations. Rumors of flying around the capital city all last week that the legislature might use this as an opportunity to appoint another Supreme Court justice.
Well, 2 more.
Or 2 more right. Even. What are you hearing about that?
Well, I think
and
it's a lot of rumor.
it?
Most House members have said they haven't heard anything about it. There have been some Republicans that have spoken out and said it's a bad idea. The Constitution actually allows it to have up to 8 associate justices and 1 chief justice. I think it would be a bad idea, and I hope that it doesn't. I hope we're not going to get into the business where we're going to try to reverse the will of the voters. The Democrats won that Supreme Court election. I do want to say one quick thing about HB 2. You know, it's not an accident that Governor McCrory won Mecklenburg County by 3,000 votes in 2012 and lost it by 135,000 votes in 2016. Think about that for a second.
Because it didn't have any impact. HB 2 obviously did.
Well, I think it was a combination of HB 2 and toll roads. It clearly had an impact, with all due respect to Senator Rucho.
John, while we're talking about rumors, there's another rumor that's been floating around town this past week, which says that the legislature might intervene in the gubernatorial election between Pat McCrory and Roy Cooper, similar to what happened with the legislature in 2004. What are you hearing about that, and what's the likelihood?
Well, that's not a rumor. That's the process that North Carolina has for resolving contested elections. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to happen. There would have to be a contest, and I think that the State Board of Elections would have to rule in a way that one of the 2 parties would disagree with, and then it would be appealed to the General Assembly. Back after the 2004 election, by the way, the Constitution had always anticipated the General Assembly settling contested elections, but there had never been any process for doing it. And it was sort of unintentionally gotten away with when the Constitution was rewritten in the early 70s. So after the 2004 disputed election where Bill Fletcher and June Atkinson were only separated by a few thousand votes, and there were disputes about out-of-precinct provisional ballots and so forth, the legislature decided to create a process retroactively, and you know who did it? Dan Clodfelter and Deborah Ross. They created a process. They're the main sponsors of the bill. It is still the law today. So if there is
But the court ruled against them in that, didn't they not?
No, it didn't. That is still the process that we have today. The court ruled about out-of-precinct provisional ballots and so forth, but this is undisputedly the process. Now, will we ever get to that point? Will there be legitimate reasons to contest the election? That is a separate matter and clearly unsettled.
Well, and it's totally unsettled because we're heading for a recount in these races, which is not going to be held at least until November 29th. Both Cooper and McCrory have been raising money to pay for legal fees. Connie, you think this means that we should expect lawsuits resulting all of this? I know that some of the legal fees that they're going to cover the process of the recounts and overseeing county election boards and so forth like that, but doesn't it sound to you like that we're headed for a lawsuit here?
Well, unless with the recount there's such a clear winner where it's 15 or 20,000 votes that somebody's winning by, definitely the lawyers are going to be the ones making the money.
But Dennis, here's the issue here. We're supposed to have an inauguration on January 7th. Most people, and you've been in this position, most people have been elected to office. You only have 2 months at best to try to put a team together and so forth like that. When do you think we might finally know when we're going to have, what's the final outcome of this is going to be?
Tom, the real honest answer is we don't know when that will be. If it gets into contested court cases and things of that nature, it could go on forever, which to your point, what's going to happen when somebody needs to govern our state and be the chief executive officer of North Carolina state government? And it takes time. Cooper's at a disadvantage because he's going to have to then come in and take and get his people pulled together and his team put together. Governor McCrory has a distinct advantage in that area because he already has some of his folks in place. So it's going to be a real calamity.
He's at a disadvantage, though, isn't he, though, Chris? Because, I mean, he can talk to people, he can sort of vet people, but he can't really make promises of cabinet secretary positions.
Well, that's right, but I think
forth.
it's important to realize that the voter, Roy Cooper is ahead by thousands of votes, several thousand votes. It's not 100. It's not 100 votes. It's not 5 votes. This is a significant advantage for Roy Cooper. Number one. Number two, if Pat McCrory files lawsuits, he's in effect suing people he's appointed, saying they didn't do the job he appointed them to do. They run the county boards of elections. They run the state board of elections. Their elections in North Carolina have been in Republican hands since 2013 at every county and at the state level.
That is a complete misstating of what's going on. That we have no idea what the legal challenges could be. They could have nothing to do with what county boards of elections
They're charging malfeasance, John.
We're not talking about Durham.
We've had 12 counties.
Many other counties
Well, we're talking about
where the county board of
malfeasance
elections were not the actors in
We
the
had
story.
12
The county
counties
board of
this
elections
past
are in
week.
charge of the election.
That is
Yeah,
correct, but
we've-
what if you had provisional ballots that were cast illegally? That wouldn't be the county board of elections' decision.
Provisional ballots will be all reviewed individually, and then they'll
That's
make
correct.
a decision about whether or not they'll be counted, and they'll
That
be
is
reviewed
correct.
by a board of elections with
And
two
what
Republicans and one Democrat will make the decision.
What if you had contested absentee ballots?
But to the
Then
point,
that board will make the decision.
to
Two
the point of-
Republicans and one Democrat in every single case.
It wouldn't be malfeasance on their part. There might be disagreements
The
about the
rhetoric
law.
from the
That's what
the
legal
rhetoric
is
from the
about.
McCrory administration is malfeasance, corruption, all sorts of things that are way over the top, and those are his people he's
You are
accusing it
talking
of.
about Durham, not the rest
No,
of the state.
I'm talking about the rest of the state.
They're not talking about
They have
blaming-
made that. They have made that allegation all over the state.
They
They're trying
have
to set a
not.
narrative up that there's a corrupt election process, and they run the election
They are
process.
talking, in that particular case, they were talking about Durham and the recent case in Durham in the primary election.
Which
Now,
has
I'm not-
nothing to do with the general election in this case. That person is no
course.
longer there, and the
Of course.
Republicans head of the Durham County Board of Elections keeps saying there has been no problems, and he's opening up the process.
And all the
process has been
employees that
opened.
have worked in administering the elections in Durham are all Republicans.
If
They were all brought in by the
there's a problem in the
Republicans.
McCrory administration at HHS, is that his fault, or is that some nebulous person's
Are you
fault?
suggesting that a Republican board supervising poll workers who worked for the Democrats for years have complete control
I'm
over
saying
everything
that the
they do?
Republicans have been in charge of elections for 4 years. This is a Republican
You're
elections
getting way
process.
ahead
I think
of
we
the
ought to go
story
out
here.
for a sandwich, and when these guys
Okay,
finish,
well-
we'll just. But there were 12 counties that filed that have.
There are protests, Tom,
yes.
but I'm not prejudging any of them. They could all end up being nothing. There could be no basis for anything. I just think we shouldn't jump to any conclusions. I well remember previous elections when Democrats were in charge and Republicans were in the lead in votes, and the Democrats didn't say, "Oh, never mind." Okay, so let's just take this carefully and count the votes properly and proceed.
Well, I think we're going to have to. Final word, Dennis.
Well, I was just going to say, I think that most election boards take their jobs very, very seriously, and they take a lot of pride in making sure the election is carried off without any flaws. And I believe this will be the case when we get out there and start scrubbing these numbers, whatever the issue may be, that they'll turn out to be the right numbers that we saw on election night. And if so,
The outcomes will be the same. The numbers may be a little different.
Probably.
All right. Thanks for ending out on a high note. We thank you for watching NC Spin on the air or on YouTube. Here's a reminder, there's much more on our website, ncspin.com, or NC Spin on Facebook. You'll find video footage not seen anywhere else, perspective pieces from our panel, and my weekly column. Get more balanced debate from the Old North State on ncspin.com, NC Spin on Facebook, or on Twitter at NC Spin Tweets. After we come back from these messages, we're going to talk about the Trump effect in North Carolina.
NC Spin will return after these messages.
The slogan on our family farm is growing the next generation. It means using innovative technology to conserve water and increase yields. It embodies our passion for providing food and fiber for our neighbors near and far. It represents our desire to take care of our employees, our land, and to leave a better place for our children. Farm life isn't easy, but it's a good life, and I love what I do.
I help educate and inspire visually impaired students to strive for a brighter future.
I make sure visitors to the North Carolina Zoo take a walk on the wild side.
And I make sure that the fuel you buy is a quality product from pipeline to pump.
I support small businesses in North Carolina by matching them with hard-working, well-trained employees.
I make sure the roads you drive on are safe.
Scenic, the one voice speaking in support of the men and women who are making North Carolina great.
We now return to NC Spin.
It's certainly too early to say that with a certainty what effect the Trump presidency is going to have on our state, but that hasn't prevented speculation as to the impact. Chris, the big question on everybody's mind seems to be what Donald Trump might do about HB 2, which, by the way, was not much of an impact on the gubernatorial election. We learned last week that the trial over HB 2 is not going to be held until next summer. Is it possible that a Donald Trump attorney general might decide to drop that lawsuit, making it a moot point?
Well, it is possible that they might drop the lawsuit, but the ACLU has filed a lawsuit not just on the bathroom provision. They filed a lawsuit on the entirety of HB 2 in federal court. So
but if the federal government is not involved in that lawsuit, doesn't that
No,
take...
the ACLU can file their own lawsuit in the federal courts. So this is not going to go away in the courts, number one. And number two, as we've said on the show many times, HB 2 is not just about the bathroom provision and where transgender people need to use public facilities. It's about discrimination against LGBT people overall. It's about local government authority. There's all sorts of issues. And businesses as late as a couple weeks ago are saying they're not coming to North Carolina. They're going to Richmond, Virginia with 700 jobs. It's still an issue.
Connie, assuming this goes all the way into the courts, and it's likely that it will, the Supreme Court's already agreed that they're going to hear a similar case to this. Donald Trump's already said he's going to appoint a Supreme Court nominee pretty quickly, and has a pretty strong chance, the way things are, being able to get that confirmed by the Senate. How might that eventually determine this discrimination lawsuit?
I think there's a very good chance that the state of North Carolina would win at the Supreme Court level. And there have been some similar type appellate court federal decisions that have kind of leaned toward North Carolina's state position on the issues that are within House Bill 2. So I think it could end the argument finally. There could still be the social issues that are out there, the pressure that's put on the business community to be opposed to the legislation here within North Carolina. But I think the Supreme Court, and you never know 100%, but there's a good chance they'll side with the state.
John, you wrote an interesting column this week
pertaining... It does happen occasionally.
Yeah, it might be the first time.
Pertaining to this same subject. You can tell it's close to Thanksgiving. You wrote a column about this, talking about North Carolina's managed care application, Medicaid in general. Trump has indicated that what he might do is just turn Medicaid back over to the states with block grants. How would that affect our application?
Well, Trump has said, or Trump's people have said a few things about it. This is not really their proposal. This is Paul Ryan's proposal. You know, in Washington, we're now going to have a White House party and a Capitol Hill party. And they all have R next to their name, but they're not really the same party. So when they're in conjunction, when they're in coherence, then that's going to be policy. And I think in this area, they probably will. I think that the plan here on Medicaid, the Medicaid expansion debate that we had in North Carolina for years is now essentially over. The debate we had. And to me, we're going to have a debate about Medicaid in the future, but I think it's going to be about a completely different story. I think that somehow in Washington, they will rewrite at least the portions of the Affordable Care Act that have to do with Medicaid.
I was going to ask about that.
They might potentially create a Medicaid block grant type of program where you have a fixed amount of money, it raises every year by a certain percentage, and states are given more leeway about how to organize the expenditure of those dollars. North Carolina might very well take that deal, even though they didn't take Obama's deal.
Dennis, talking about this Obamacare, throughout the course of the campaign, Trump said he was going to repeal and replace Obamacare. Now, North Carolina's in a situation where we decided not to have our own pool, if you will, of insurance companies from which people could choose. We're using the federal one. And that's Blue Cross Blue Shield is the only insurer that is statewide in North Carolina. What do you think about this business about repealing or drastically revising Obamacare, and how might it affect us here in North Carolina? Because Blue Cross already said they lost a lot of money previously on covering it.
Well, I think the president-elect has sort of backed away a little bit from the total repeal of Obamacare. He's now saying he'll take the best parts of it and try to make it a more effective, cost-effective piece of legislation. And my feeling is that President-elect Trump is more of a pragmatist in this area, and I look for him to look for a solution in this, because millions of people are going to lose their insurance if it is repealed totally, and that's going to be another calamity in this country if that happens.
You know, the irony, of course, is that John talked about North Carolina wouldn't take Obama's deal. Well, guess who did take it? Mike Pence. Who's now the head of the transition team and the vice president. Indiana expanded Medicaid under the Affordable Care Act with a very conservative plan that the Obama administration approved. So it'd be interesting to see what advice Mike Pence gives Donald Trump about how to deal with Medicaid and how to deal with health care.
Medicaid expansion. All right, we've got issues. Donald Trump's talked about immigration quite a bit. We've got a large military presence here in North Carolina, a large agricultural presence in this state, the largest single contributor to our economy. As well as federal funds coming down from education. Any other insights or thoughts about how a Trump presidency might impact our state?
Well, I'll just give you one example. We now have all three counties in the Triangle, as well as Mecklenburg County and Charlotte, invested in and investing in more mass transit projects. Whoever's the Department of Transportation Secretary and the Trump administration and the Republican Congress, now all on the same team, more or less, on some matters. On that question, there may be changes in the formula or how likely there is that federal money will come down to, for example, rail projects.
One more thing. With the infrastructure money that, you know, President-elect Trump wants to push into the market out there, particularly for transportation, that could be a big boom for us here in North Carolina.
Another area is environmental regulation. You know, for a long time, the General Assembly has moved to now make the federal regulation sort of the minimum, and just will move the state regulation back to what's the federal minimum level. I think there are a lot of people in Washington worried that federal minimum level environmental regulation will be dramatically reduced.
And
meaning more
if he
debates will happen
deports
in
a
the
bunch
state.
of undocumented immigrants, that could have an impact on business in our state.
It would be devastating to farmers in the state. It would
building contractors,
contractors. Yeah. It would have a direct impact on not just North Carolina's economy, but every state in the country.
Well, obviously, it's something that we're going to be looking at and talking about on NC Spin as this administration unfolds. After these messages, we're going to come back and talk about disaster response.
NC Spin will return after these messages.
The cost of everything has gone up dramatically over the last 75 years. With one exception, keeping electricity affordable. That's the power of your co-op membership. Learn more at togetherwesave.com.
North Carolina's Touchstone Energy Cooperatives, looking out for you.
You sleep on concrete till your body get immune to concrete.
My mom got my brother and I up and said, come on, we're leaving.
I became homeless in the beginning of this year.
When I was about 4 or 5 years old, our house caught fire.
I used to see my brother. If he see me, he'd turn and go the other direction.
We did the only thing that we could think of, and we went to a Salvation Army shelter.
You know, we don't have this, like, what's your background look like? We just say, what do you need?
I remember the man from the Salvation Army coming down with a box of clothes.
The Salvation Army officer bought my brother and I an ice cream cone.
Last week, my brother walked up to me, and he just started a conversation.
Today I've given my life to the Salvation Army because I remember what somebody did for me, my brother, and my mom over 30 years ago.
The Salvation Army for me means hope.
Compassion.
Family.
Support.
We now return to NC Spin.
North Carolina, perhaps as much as any other state, was severely impacted by Hurricane Matthew. Governor McCrory now estimates our state recorded more than $2 billion in damages, and he's applied to the federal government for $1 billion in aid. There are roads still out in some sections, and some families are just now getting back into homes. Others are in hotels paid by FEMA. But another disaster threatened our state. California-type forest fires have devastated thousands of acres of woodlands around Lake Lure and the western part of the state. Dennis, after the initial response or wave of volunteers and donations, many of the folks down east are wondering, where's the help going to come from to help make them whole? Recovery is going to take a lot of time. Assistance may be weeks or months in coming. How can we help them?
Well, Tom, it hit these families very hard. They lost their homes. As you mentioned, they're staying in hotels and trailers, bunking up with their families. Look, the governor is working very hard on this, I think. He's appealed to Congress to send $1 billion down here in emergency relief. He's looking for other sources. There are competing charities and foundations that are trying to help out. And I don't know how effective that's going to be.
Because some of the people down east are saying, where's the help? It ain't here.
It's not there. And people who may want to give are very confused about who to give to. And so I think what we're just going to have to do is help our neighbors out and appeal to a volunteer kind of effort to try to help them bail out of a very, very sad and bad situation.
But let's assume, Connie, you've had relationships up and down in government. Let's assume that he goes through this application for $1 billion in aid. It's going to obviously take a while for it to get approval, then back down here. How long do you think it's going to take for this money to actually get in the hands of people who need it? Are we looking weeks? Are we looking months, or what?
You're looking at several months. There's nothing that moves too quickly, because even once it gets approved, then you have to go through the process of distributing it and making sure it goes to what it was actually supposed to go for, that there's some sort of audit trail. But back to what Dennis was saying, we go to, I talk about my little church in Asheboro called Hopewell Friends. We just have some members who have friends and family that live in the Fayetteville area. They call us up and tell us what they need. We buy it for them, we ship it down to them. And that's really what North Carolinians need to do. The folk in those areas need to let friends and family know, what do we need?
To that point, again, some of the people down east are saying they're not seeing the help. Usually the Baptist men of North Carolina are just wonderful about getting out and cutting woods and doing things that need to be done. Is the fact that we're not hearing much about this because it's still difficult getting into some of these areas, John? Is it that people aren't responding at the level that perhaps they have in some other situations, or is it the media just not giving it much coverage?
Well, let's face it. I mean, the elections, the week before the election, the week after the election, the elections have dominated media coverage, both in North Carolina and nationally. And as that recedes to some extent, I think there'll be media return to the attention of the eastern part of the state and the western part of the state where the fires are occurring. What I would also say is the state of North Carolina, the federal government combining with the state dollars, that is primarily going to be about infrastructure repair. That's going to take a while.
Yeah, I think so. Dennis, to your point, you were talking about people don't know who to give money to. I just have to say that in my heart, Salvation Army is always my first choice. They get down there. In fact, our Salvation Army in Wake County is still serving meals down in Wayne County. to people. And with a 10% administrative overhead, 90 cents out of every dollar goes direct to service. So that's a good place as far as we're concerned. Yeah. After these messages, we're going to ask the panel to tell us something we don't know.
NC Spin is brought to you in part by the North Carolina Farm Bureau. The Farm Bureau and Agriculture. We keep North Carolina growing.
It's a fact. Patients who receive care in the medical home from a trusted family physician reduce healthcare costs through prevention, early detection, and affordable management of high-cost chronic diseases.
Every dollar invested in healthcare matters. Let's invest them wisely. Building on North Carolina's medical home model, better health begins with a medical home, a trusted family physician, the best return on our healthcare investment. Learn about the importance of medical homes at ournchealthcare.com.
I help educate and inspire visually impaired students to strive for a brighter future.
I make sure visitors to the North Carolina Zoo take a walk on the wild side.
And I make sure that the fuel you buy is a quality product from pipeline to pump.
I support small businesses in North Carolina by matching them with hard-working, well-trained employees.
I make sure the roads you drive on are safe.
Scenic, the one voice speaking in support of the men and women who are making North Carolina great.
We now return to NC Spin.
Now we get to the part of the show everybody tells me is their favorite, and that's when we ask the panel to tell us something we don't know. Connie Wilson, I'll start with you.
You know, right after the election for both caucuses, Democrat and Republican in the House and the Senate, then you come up with the leadership positions that need to be filled. So they go from the frying pan to the skillet or back and forth, however it works. But we do have a challenge with Speaker Tim Moore and Harry Warren. There's several seats that will be filled there. I think the folk that are currently holding those seats will likely have the votes to keep those seats. On the Senate side, things are fairly stable, but we still have a rules chair position that we're waiting and a senior appropriations chair.
Tell us something we don't know, Chris.
Well, if folks are sick of elections, they might not want to be around for the next 3 years. There's some chance that legislative districts are going to have to be redrawn for sure in 2017. There's some chance we might have a legislative election in 2017, in 2018, and in 2020, all for the General Assembly. 3 elections in 3 years.
For those folks moving to Canada, they ain't going to worry about it. John, tell us something we don't know.
Roy Cooper got about 120,000 more votes than Hillary Clinton. And Pat McCrory got about a little over 60,000 fewer votes than Trump. That's what happened in the governor's race. But it did not happen in the urban areas. So speaking to HB2, that's not where Cooper outperformed the rest of the Democratic ticket. It was entirely in the suburban and rural counties. That's the difference.
Dennis, tell us something we don't know.
Tom, how did Mike Morgan win this Supreme Court judgeship? Well, what happened was when the Supreme Court said that he could not stand for retention vote, that is Bob Edmonds. Then they had the vote. The legislature forgot to designate they had to have a party. And as a result of that, we think that because of the coattails of
and the fact he was on the ballot
first one on the ballot, that was what did it.
Well, you've heard our spin on the issues of the day. To stay informed all during the week, give your feedback, and read my weekly column, be sure to visit our website, ncspin.com, or catch NC Spin on Facebook. Next week, we've got a very special program we want you to tune in and to watch. It's going to focus entirely on public education in our state. Until that time, we want you to stay informed, watch out for the spin, and have a happy Thanksgiving.
Join us next week and get the spin on issues facing our state.